kalt in, and welcome to Pandora. Over the past several weeks, the first volume of Avatar: The High Ground has been slowly making its way into local comic book shops around the world. As such, I was finally able to pick up my copy the other day, and so today I'll be giving my thoughts and opinions on the series. For those who are worried, I won't be going into any spoilers here, but do keep an eye on the channel this week for a far more in-depth video covering all of the new lore that we learn in the initial volume. Also, if you're looking to get a copy, I would highly recommend you contact your local comic book shop, as they may be able to order it in, as was the case with myself. When adapting any type of media into another, you will always run the risk of losing tone and themes from the original that can't be so easily replicated in another medium. As such, a story's meaning and purpose may become lost in this adaptation and may come across as an empty, hollow version of itself. I'm very happy to say that Avatar: The High Ground Volume 1 does not follow this trend. Instead, I believe it enhances the original script and presents it in a way that gives the story far more depth and meaning. While it may suffer in its pacing due to how it was adapted across 3 volumes, I believe it's a fantastic opening act to what will become a highly intriguing character-driven story. Before I delve in further, let me give you some context to the series. When James Cameron was writing the screenplay for The Way of Water, it went through several changes over its long development cycle. Several of these changes were due to the addition of more planned sequels for the franchise. As such, the very first version of the screenplay for the second Avatar film was never used and remained completed for some years. In 2019, it was announced that this version was to be turned into a comic book series called Avatar: The High Ground. However, shortly after, all listings for it were removed online. It remained a lost piece of media for the franchise until last year, when it was announced to be releasing once more. With its release, we can finally see what James Cameron had originally intended for the sequel's story, now being used as a prequel for The Way of Water. But does it still hold up after all these years? And how well does the story transition into a prequel comic format? Taking place a decade after the original film, the first volume wastes no time in bringing readers up to speed with everything that's happened for Jake and Neytiri in the intervening years. We are shown their family, and how the Omaticaya have adapted after the destruction of Home Tree. The story so far is being narrated by Jake himself. As such, we are treated to some wonderful inner thoughts and ongoing conflicts that he has about his life he has found himself in. We see he's still in turmoil by his actions he took in the first film, and knows that the threat of the RDA still lingers. Despite this, he is doing everything he can to still be a strong leader for his clan and a father figure for his family. Talking of his family, we are introduced to several new characters, all of which will play in prominent roles in The Way of Water. Without going into spoilers on each of the Sully kids, the series so far has been brilliantly able to develop each of them and help give them their own personalities and struggles. They have been given strong character development by the story so far, with a lot of personal conflict set up for each of them in this opening act. I am very much looking forward to seeing how these smaller interpersonal struggles will be developed further in the second and third volumes. While not originally intended as a prequel to The Way of Water, so far the series has done an amazing job at setting up each of the new characters and making the readers care about their stories going forward. Outside of the new faces, the first volume is also able to firmly establish already existing characters by giving them new trials to overcome. At the forefront of this is how Neytiri in the series is now a mother. While the comic goes out of its way to show that she's still the formidable warrior we know her to be, it also shows another, more nurturing side of her that cares deeply about her family and only wants what's best for them. It's wonderful to see another side to the character, and really makes me excited to see where they will take her character in The Way of Water. It's also nice to see her and Jake's relationship shown in the comic, and how Jake's own personal struggles is affecting that in small ways. There is a wonderful scene between them, which I won't spoil, but it goes to show why we all cared so much about the two of them in the first film. The series knows how to show its characters and use them to help move the story along. I have to give a lot of praise to Sherry L. Smith, the author of the series, for developing these characters and bringing to life from the original script. I can imagine a lot of the characterization in the series came from her. The story itself in the first volume is a perfect first act. While it's something I'll dive deeper into on a further video due to spoilers, I believe it was able to set up the state of Pandora extremely well, but also start to bring in the main threat of the story in a believable yet ominous way. Stay tuned on the channel for my further thoughts on this later this week. Not only was the writing of the series able to once again immerse me into Pandora, but the art brought me right back to the beauty and splendour of the alien moon that we all know and love. For me, and I do apologise in advance if I do butcher these names, Guilherme Balbi, the artist for the series, was able to perfectly capture the diversity and strangeness of the moon, while still making it feel familiar to fans. His art is outstanding in the first volume, and the certain one-page panels are beautiful to see. He's able to draw familiar elements of the franchise in new ways which make them stand out even more on page and highlights how well he knows this universe. The art is truly outstanding and is a must-get on that basis alone. Everything from character expressions to the flora of Pandora is lovingly drawn, and it really goes to show how beautiful the world of Avatar is. I couldn't talk about the art without mentioning the colourists, Michael Atiyah and Wes Dzobia. Once again, I do apologise for those names if I butchered them. Both of who are able to enhance the alien feel of the world and bring it to life in such a unique way. Everything from seeing the bioluminescence of Pandora's nights to the roaring skies of the Hallelujah Mountains highlights their talent and really adds another layer of immersion when reading. While the first volume is a great opening act, it does unfortunately suffer because of that. Having been adapted from a screenplay, it's very clear in this first volume that this would be the first few scenes of a film. As such, its pacing can be very slow at times. While the story does progress throughout, the overall story has really yet to get going, with the two other volumes where I assume most of the main story beats will take place. It's not to say that there are no big revelations or events in this volume, but sometimes when reading, I did feel it was taking longer than it should have to get to some of these points. I understand that you need this setup and development before going full on into the inevitable conflict, and I really do appreciate the time it takes so that we as readers can get to know these new characters. But it does feel sometimes that it is trying to fill out for time in this volume, with some sidetracking here and there. I don't think it ruins the book at all. In fact, many of these side ventures are wonderful developments of characters, but I do wish we were able to get the full story in one and not broken up over 3 volumes. I think this would help to alleviate these concerns and make for a much smoother reading experience. I do like where this volume leaves off in the story, however, and if they had to split this up, then it's the perfect place to leave the reader for now. I just hope further down the line we may get a completed version released, combining all 3 of these volumes. Overall, Avatar The High Ground Volume 1 is a brilliant start to what I believe will be a fantastic series and a must-read for anyone going into The Way of Water. It is able to give development and personalities to many of the new characters to the franchise while still developing those we already know and love, giving them far more depth than we've ever seen before. It is able to immerse the reader so effectively in the world of Pandora again that it feels like a perfect continuation of the story, either through its art, its stunning colours, or its ability to brilliantly develop the characters we all know and love. It's able to give the same wonder and awe that we felt when seeing the film for the first time. While I do believe this volume suffers in pacing due to how the series was released, I don't believe it impacts the reading experience at all, and really is only a small nitpick in this otherwise very strong first entry. I am very excited to see where the story goes from here, and how the 2 remaining volumes can wrap up everything that this volume has established, while still leading into The Way of Water. While we see some small elements of the story here, the precedence for this volume is character establishment and development, which will always be wonderful to see, especially given how these characters have grown over the decades since the events of the first film. I would highly recommend any Avatar fan read this first volume, as it will be an essential part of the universe going into The Way of Water. Plus, it is able to give more development and growth from characters in the franchise than I've ever seen before, and really stands out as an example of storytelling going forward for Avatar. It is a brilliant read from start to finish, and one I hope every fan can enjoy. A huge thank you to all of the creative team who worked on this, and who were able to get this into our hands after so many years. They have done an amazing job translating this from screenplay and turning it into an engaging and beautiful comic series. Please go and show all your support for them and help them to see how wonderful their work is. I know many of you watching are having difficulty finding copies of High Ground at the moment, but hopefully more will start to arrive in comic book shops, and always check your local comic book shop as they will most likely be able to order it in for you. I'll be sure to cover the other 2 volumes when they become available. But what did you think of the first volume? Do you like where the series is going? And do you believe it's an essential read for The Way of Water? I really can't wait to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. But until then, hej alvaj, gevami.